What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Kirsten Potenza, CEO and founder of Pound the Rockout Workout. You're listening to The Big Green Couch, where I sit down with noisemakers across various industries to discuss different topics, to bring new ideas, fresh perspectives, and practical tips to you, our community. Let's get started. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of The Big Green Couch. Today we have an amazing guest, Ali Kriegsman. She is the co-founder and COO of Bulletin, a B2B wholesale marketplace. She is the co-founder and COO of Bulletin, a B2B wholesale marketplace. Her mission is to help founders and small business owners, and especially women, redefine the word success. Kriegsman believes that if you're launching a business from scratch and sign up for that struggle, you're already ahead of so many others who would prefer to defer a dream. Stay stuck and wonder, quote unquote, what if? A recipient of the Forbes 30 Under 30 and named one of Fast Company's most creative people in business, Ali has helped thousands of brands expand their distribution and sell in both offline and online stores all around the US and Canada. She is a salesperson, self-taught publicist, marketer, and growth strategist, and has experience scaling both bootstrap and venture-backed businesses. Her book, How to Build a Goddamn Empire, is the no bullshit book on entrepreneurship you have always needed. And it is out now, available in both hardcover and audiobook formats. Using the questions she's most frequently asked as her guideposts, Ali writes about her experience launching and growing Bulletin directly from the trenches and features words of triumph, failure, and wisdom from 30 other women-owned businesses. The book has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, The Today Show, and more, and is now available internationally in the UK, Australia, Finland, Denmark, South Africa, Germany, and beyond. Please welcome Ali to the Big Green Couch. All right, good morning, Ali. I'm going to start with a super basic question. How are you? How is your heart and your soul?
I'm good. I feel very revived and refreshed with the world opening back up and starting to socialize and see friends and go to dinners and hang out in the park. I am also a Gemini, so I'm not like super astrological, but Gemini season is always like my time. I feel most myself in the summer, so I'm feeling really great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. It's been a crazy a little over a year, and I wanted to start there because and just for reference, it's June 16th, 2021 today, and the a good portion of our world officially opened up yesterday. So I feel like an appropriate time to reflect on the last year or so. And I was thinking about this yesterday, and I'm going to ask you if you remember kind of where you were and how you felt, both as a businesswoman, but also just personally, the moment the first shutdown happened, and kind of beyond, because it was a bit of, a roller coaster after the first shutdown.
Weirdly, I felt this hybrid sense of concern and relief. We had just launched our wholesale marketplace in late 2019 after pivoting from a brick and mortar based retail business to a true software company. Um, and Bulletin helps brands expand their distribution and sell to retailers all over the US and Canada. And it allows retailers to source inventory from thousands of brands for their stores all in one place, whether the retailer is an online retailer or a brick and mortar retailer. And so my first sense was like, our customers are in trouble. Like, I just knew that our business was going to get hit really hard. With the world closing up, retailers were not in business. They were pivoting themselves and struggling to really learn e-commerce, and build their Shopify stores and their Squarespace sites and start selling on social media. And so I knew our customers were in a bind, and that really concerned me and upset me. But I think on a personal level, to be totally honest with you, I've been so go, go, go my whole life. I've never really taken time to pause, especially building a venture backed business. Everything is always about growth. And sometimes, the fundamentals get not thrown out the window, but like the optimizing for growth sometimes means you're not optimizing for creating the best product ever or the best user experience ever. And I knew that we would not be under the same pressure to grow at the rate that we had been, because our customers weren't in business. And so I saw it as a real neat great time to kind of settle in, buckle in, and think through how we could improve our technology and our customers' experience and our service and how we support them. So I think on a personal level, it was nice to settle into that and kind of feel like the priorities were shifting away from rapid, insane exponential growth and more toward adding value. And I think the concern and the anxiety came from knowing that our business was definitely going to be in some sort of trouble, and our sales were going to dip because our customers were not able to function and serve their customers. So there was definitely this ripple effect, that left me feeling, at ease in many ways because I felt like we could finally focus on the right things for a while, but also really, really anxious because I knew that our customers were not going to be in a good place for many months to come.
Yeah, I think I can relate to just about everything that you just said. I think the companies that did it well really brought a lot of empathy and humility. And I know personally, and I know for you too, your company is very much based on community and there's a sense of responsibility. And it was kind of beautiful to see a lot of people say, You guys come first. How do we help you survive?" And in that, I think a lot of companies became better, not only because they had that opportunity to pause and almost rebuild or evolve, I guess, to make things better, but also you saw people truly put their customers and their community first, which was very much needed. And then, yeah, I mean, personally, the pause, the forced, slowdown, I think was a beautiful silver lining for most people, and, um, I don't know how you feel about it, but as things reopen, what are your feelings on your I guess your hopes for where it goes and what people take into the future? I am like, I want people to still value, the slower life and the small things that we realized were so important. What are your thoughts on that as we kind of move back into life?
It's such an interesting question, and I think it's an interesting question for me to ask of myself and answer out loud because Bulletin started as this digitally based business. It was an e commerce newsletter spotlighting the coolest emerging brands and businesses. We then layered in pop ups and retail, and ran retail stores and pop ups for a total of about 3 years, which was a very IRL in person experience. We were face to face with our customers, we were face to face with these brands. I was running events in the biggest Bulletin store like 2 to 3 nights a week consecutively for most of 2018. And I'm a very in-person person. I love exchanging energy in person. I love having conversations in person. I love picking up on people's facial expressions and their body movements and their body signals. And that's where I really feel my best self, and that's where I feel like I thrive. And Bulletin, since the end of 2019 and building and launching our wholesale marketplace is a software business. It's kind of back to a fully digital business. We don't run our stores anymore. And I've had to check in with myself and be like, okay, when do I feel like I'm shining and growing and thriving? And I think being stuck to my computer and glued to my computer to keep this business alive through the pandemic and keep our team motivated and feeling like they're on solid ground, scrolling through Instagram endlessly and like leveraging that as my sense of social connection and some form of activity because we couldn't socialize and see our friends. Like, as we're coming out of this, I feel like a different person. I feel like I'm back. I feel like being able to be with people in real life, being able to exchange those energies, pick up on their energy and their expressions, do actual social activities rather than being on social as an activity. I feel myself like coming alive again. And I think what I hope people take with them is the appreciation and realization for how important in-person human connection and interaction really is. I think we all learned through the pandemic that digital touch points were somewhat of a saving grace in many ways. They allowed us to keep networking, to keep having some sort of social touch point over FaceTime with our families and our friends, but it's draining at the same time. And it's been a really interesting experience for me, kind of comparing how I've felt running a very in person, physical, like IRL based business in the past to now running a fully digital business, and the shifts there for me and the differences in how I feel there, and kind of comparing that and lining that up with how I felt, pre-COVID, being a very out there social in-person type of human, and what I experienced mental health wise and just like happiness wise through the pandemic, and realizing like, wow, I need to be out in the world. That's like where I find my sweet spot. And I hope that a lot of people build that same appreciation for being in person, because I just don't think that digital can replicate that exchange of energy in the same way.
Amen to that. I Our business is all about human connection and the magic that happens when you kind of force people to be in a room together. And at the beginning of COVID, I was like, oh my God, we're never going to go back to a fully in real life world. And as the days went on and as the months went on, I saw almost, I mean, and we had internal discussions about, do we need to make things more virtual for post COVID? And what I feel like we've come to, and towards kind of the end, was this realization of the value of human connection and its effects on mental health, especially. And I think I said this in our 10-year letter. I know people are going to be running and sprinting back to each other post COVID, and that makes me really happy. And and yeah, personally, I most people don't know this about me, but I'm a bit of an introvert, and I think in real life, being around people again feels like a gift, and it feels like something I'll never take advantage of again, and I find myself being more, like, outgoing than I was before.
And also more present. Like, I feel like now for me, when I'm with my friends and we're at dinner, we're socializing, like, if someone's on their phone, I'm like, what are you doing, girl? And we've had like over a year of being glued to this device, and I don't understand it. Like, it's something that feels very like out of body for me when I'm interacting with three people in person, and one of them is like on Instagram or on TikTok or scrolling through their email. It's like we did that. Not that I'm saying let's like put that to bed, but to your point, I feel like I appreciate in-person interactions and experiences so much more now, where I don't want my technology to taint it. And it used to be that I'd have to really kind of dictate to myself and promise myself and like exert self-control in social settings to not be on my phone. And now that it doesn't feel like work. It feels like this natural organic thing where I want to put my phone away. I don't even think to look at it for hours on end. Whereas I feel like pre-COVID, it was like this itch to like check my Instagram notifications and like check my email. And now it's like that itch is fully gone. I feel like I scratched it to death all of COVID. And now I don't even think twice about it. It's like my phone's away if I'm having a social encounter, and I have no need or desire to like pick it up and have it interrupt the vibe. And I get weirdly like perturbed when other people do it, which is something I'm working on.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm with you. I also feel like the sense of, like, it's really hard to say this out loud because I'm speaking in a very privileged seat where my livelihood was, slightly at stake business wise, but I didn't struggle, throughout COVID. So it's hard to say, COVID gave me the power to like know that you could put your phone aside and you could put your emails aside. Um, there I mean, it's true. It's just, like, hard to say that out loud sometimes, but that's, like, the feeling that I have is, like, I don't need to do that, and now I know that I don't need to do that. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be, um, that unhealthy addiction that probably existed before. So, I wanna hear I'm I'm a very I, like, love the start. I love the beginning of business, the beginning of any project. It's the part that just like lights me up. So I'd love to hear more about kind of the why behind Bulletin and like what were the early days like and what really pushed you over the edge to start and then continue.
Yeah. So I would say the motivation behind Bulletin, I mean, I think with starting a business, there's always a personal motivation. Like there's a reason that you specifically want to sign yourself up for this adventure slash journey slash uphill climb. And then I think there's always a external kind of like selfless or more business reason, which may have to do with your industry or your customer. So I would say the selfish kind of personal reason was I was the number one salesperson at the tech company I was working at. I was only 24. I had literally in a year and a half's time gone from a $28,000 salary to a pretty significant six-figure salary with commission. Um, and it was this realization at this tech company that like I was great at sales. Um, and that was really exciting. And I grew up with a fair amount of financial instability starting in my early teens. And so that financial cushion felt, and that stability felt really attractive and really stabilizing for a very short period of time. And then I started to get kind of antsy and I guess bored. My job was really repetitive. Being in sales, you're kind of doing the same pitch over and over again with like little tweaks here and there. But I was landing the same stale joke at every part of the pitch. And I was just kind of like, what am I doing? I'm making great money, but like, I wasn't looking 10 years ahead of me and being like, oh, I want to be the VP of sales of this company. I just couldn't see myself 10 years ahead on this track. And I didn't know exactly where I saw myself, but I knew that I loved to write. I've been a writer since I was very young. It's been kind of my secret sauce superpower since a super young age. And I also knew, and this goes more into the business reason, that I loved supporting indie brands and small businesses. My favorite activities on the weekend were going around Brooklyn and shopping all the indie shops, going to, Brooklyn Flea or Smorgasburg and meeting and shopping all of these incredible small businesses and independent brands and vendors. And a woman that I met at the tech startup I worked at, Alana, who's now my co founder and CEO, um, she had the idea to create a shoppable e-commerce newsletter spotlighting cool small businesses like that. So at the time there was like Of a Kind, Etsy, Bazaar, the kind of maker community, like shop and support indie brand space was like really heating up. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to do really high end detailed storytelling around these incredible brands and business owners. And then allow customers to shop their products throughout the story or throughout the interview. And she was looking for a writer for this idea. And I was like writing very publicly at the time. I had like some pieces on Thought Catalog that I always shared in the Slack channel at the company. I like wrote for the company's book review. So Alana knew I was a writer and she approached me and was like, do you want to work on this with me? Like it'll just be on the side just for fun, but you're a great writer and I'm not, and I would love to bring you in. And so this fully started as just me being like editor in chief slash like chief writer, only writer of this like fun newsletter side project. We worked on it, in the evenings and on the weekends here and there. And the goal for me was really to chart my next step and figure out my path. I knew that I didn't want to be a VP of sales at a technology company, I knew that I wanted to do something a little bit more creative. So for me on a personal level, it was a way to like build out my portfolio of writing in a way that was really low lift with a woman I truly respected and admired in Alana, my business partner. And I think the business case was like, it was really hard to find quality, cool brands on Etsy because it was getting so oversaturated. And it kind of started to feel like Alibaba. It was right when they had changed their seller policies. So, from that perspective, it was just kind of like, yeah, let's try to find a way to elevate and put a spotlight on the coolest brands on here that are getting drowned out by the thousands and thousands and thousands of brands. And that was the beginning. I don't know how far you want me to take it, but that was like the very original kind of nugget slash kernel that started this whole journey. And now we're, 25 people. We're a venture backed business. We still support independent brands and businesses, but we've become a technology company and a wholesale marketplace. But it really just started with an itch to be more and do more, and a love and obsession with this indie brand small business seller.
I love when somebody tells a story and I'm like seeing the movie of it in my head. Um, it's so cool. Do you miss that phase at all?
I definitely do. To be honest, my boyfriend is an entrepreneur as well. He runs an incredible platform called Norby, and they're earlier stage. And I think I might be a builder. I think I might be really attracted to like the 0 to 30 versus like the 30 to 30,000. I don't know where I got those numbers from, but Bulletin is in scale mode right now, and I think that mode is really fun and really exciting, but I think I thrive most when I'm starting from scratch and I have to turn, nothing into something. It's way more scrappy, it's like way more chaotic. But it's also really, really exciting because every single inch that you move the business forward feels so significant. And then it's like 6 months later, you look back at all the inches and you're like, oh my God, we like 4x to the business in 6 months and we turned on all these new channels. So I definitely, definitely miss that phase for sure.
I'm a definitely a starter, self-identified starter myself, and I think that's why with Pound we have different sectors, and we are often working on new things and launching new things, and that's what keeps it keeps it fresh and exciting. I think any creative kind of would probably feel that way. I wanna I wanna ask you about bootstrapping. You talk about it in your book, which we'll talk about in a second. But I feel like especially on Instagram, I see you post and talk kind of passionately about not necessarily needing to take on an investment. I would love to hear more about that, and kind of as a follow up, I'd love to know if you have any tangible tips for business owners out there who are looking to start something new and don't have access to significant funding. We have a lot of small business owners in our community, whether it be studios or gyms or just being a group fitness instructor yourself.
Yeah.
Um, I consider, being an entrepreneur. So I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on that and advice.
Yes. So I really feel like venture financing and growth financing has become really glamorized. I think that, there's so many D2C brands that people like use and see and wear all the time, like the Glossiers and Outdoor Voices of the world, who all raise venture financing away, Casper, Bonobos. And there was, this era where those businesses were getting, thrown on magazine cover after magazine cover. They were like the headlining speaker of all of these different like forums and events and conferences. Um, and I think that bootstrappers are really the ones that need to be glamorized, like starting from zero and having, minimal capital and financing to build and then grow something is exponentially harder than having someone hand money over to you to build something with, a massive amount of financing that you'll never have to pay back, because that's how venture financing works. It's basically, venture capitalists placing bets and gambling on a bunch of different companies, like dishing out money, seeing which one wins. And if you're a loser, you don't owe anyone back. It's not a loan, it's not a line of credit. Um, and I think for that reason, the fact that it's de-risked for the person taking the money, that coupled with the way it's been glamorized has kind of made venture capital this like go-to type of financing that entrepreneurs are looking for. I talk to a lot of founders who ask me, how I raised, if I can connect them with investors, and then I learn more about their business and their business model, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense as a venture-backed company. If you don't have the hockey stick growth potential and the margins, and you're not going to scale and grow like a software business can, it's just much harder to reach that 10x return for investors and get acquired or IPO. And we can see that, like the number of D2C companies that have been acquired compared to true technology businesses and venture backed software businesses that get acquired. It's just like a very wide chasm there. Um, and so the reason I talk about bootstrapping so much on Instagram and in my book is Bulletin was bootstrapped for the first year and a half. We used our savings, we used revenues from our pop up markets. We applied for and got a $20,000 grant. So that was kind of the only piece of that first like year and a half to 2 years that wasn't fully bootstrapped with just using revenues from the e-commerce site and from the markets. And it was definitely, I mean, it was harder. It was definitely harder because you don't have like a pool of money that you can pull from to support growth and support these different initiatives. But there's something that just felt more real and more true about it. You can actually test product market fit. You have this pressure to like spend money on something and know that it's going to make a certain return. Ty Haney of Outdoor Voices, which might be relevant to your audience because they're active, and Outdoor Voices is an activewear brand, specifically talks about how taking on venture financing led to like bad business practices at that company. And I don't think that she's alone in experiencing that. I think a lot of founders experience that. Um, so I guess my goal with talking about bootstrapping so much is like I really hope that in the next few years in the media, like women founders and founders in general that have bootstrapped their businesses to like the tens of millions of dollars even, or like the hundreds of millions of dollars, um, get on those magazine covers and kind of get glorified in the way that those D2C founders were getting glorified many, many years ago, because most people can't access venture financing. Only 2% of women can get venture financing year over year. Less than 2% of Black founders and Latinx founders get venture financing. Like it's a very exclusive type of financing to get. And I think the fact that it's been glorified is it's incommensurate with the fact that it's like so hard to claim for yourself. So we really need to be talking more about how to use pure revenues to drive your business, how to take out the right business loan or line of credit, the value of crowdfunding, which I can talk up, till the day ends. I think crowdfunding is such an incredible form of financing for the types of small businesses in your network, but it just seems like this form of financing that's really been shoved down businesses' throats and kind of been held up as the holy grail, but all the while it doesn't make sense for most companies, as we've said before, and for most business models. And it's also really, really inaccessible. So I think we just need to start putting other forms of financing and bootstrapping in particular, like at the forefront as the holy grail, like most special, glorified way of building a business. Because in my opinion, it is.
Yeah, you just like you just like unlocked a box that's been festering in my soul for like so many years.
Oh
No, I mean,
no, I unlocked the
I
festering
know.
box.
I've had this conversation so many times with my team. It's so hard because there's two ends of the spectrum for me. We did the same as you. We had a very small first round of investment and have not taken in anything after year two. And it's so hard because the stories that come out of Pound, the beauty, the life changing stories, people with like literally age 5 to age 85, people with disabilities, like there's so much heart and soul in it, but it'll never get the press that, a venture backed company will, or, somebody who's a little bit more press worthy or whatever it may be. And it kind of hurts my heart sometimes because I know I'll never make the decisions that will result in that. And at the same time, like the good end of the spectrum is that we still feel really small and intimate, and the team is close. And, so would I give up all of that? No. But sometimes it hurts my heart because there's so many good, beautiful things happening that just are not talked about. And instead, we're slapping, money behind companies that totally deserve it, people and women on the covers of magazine. And I'm sure Ty has felt this way. It's like you're put on this fast track, and I feel like everything that you stood for just sometimes gets thrown up in the air, and sometimes that equals failure and quick failure. And it's just a mess. I could talk about it probably for too long, but
And you lose control. Like at the end of the day, I think what's so interesting about I was obsessed with the female founder takedowns in 2020. Like I followed every single one. I read every single think piece in social media, post and comment about it. And what I realized is that a lot of like the masses, like the average person in the public who isn't in like the business world or venture world, um, doesn't necessarily understand that in many cases, founders aren't the majority stakeholders or owners or shareholders of their companies anymore at a certain point after you've raised rounds and rounds and rounds of funding. Your board or certain investors, certain funds may have more of a say in what happens at your company than you do because they're the majority shareholder. Um, and that was something that I think was like lost in that discussion last year is who is actually making these decisions? Like, are these women that were like burning at the stake for the company's mismanagement or mistakes or oversights or mistreatments, all of which need to be addressed? Like, is holding this woman accountable as like the sole source of this, like actually what's going on? Like, where is the board? Where are the investors? Where are the other shareholders? What about the larger executive team? But B, like, is coming after that one person the most effective way to enact change? And I think there's a lot that's broken in venture capital. There's a lot that is like so beautiful about it, truly. Like, I've my boyfriend's company, he's working with so many people that would have historically been boxed out of venture capital, whether it's his like incredible co-founder Steven or his female co-founder, Sam, where they like they've unlocked so much opportunity for their own respective careers, all of them, because they're now in this space, and that's so incredible. But there are also like dark, deeper, shittier parts about it that cause founders to run their companies in ways that a normal company wouldn't run because it's venture backed and the number one priority is growth. And a lot of those darker parts just get overlooked, and like the founders just get put on magazine covers and it's like everything's fine. So I think it's like that's a separate conversation for a separate podcast episode, but I'm amazed with what you've done. I think you should be so proud with, your financing history and your trajectory, because taking that like initial round and then like making it profitable and making it work from there is like extremely hard to do. So anyone who's listening to this who doesn't understand or appreciate that or didn't know that before, like now that Pound is they're doing something that a lot of businesses have like not successfully done, and it's awesome.
uh, appreciate that. So you wrote a goddamn book. I don't like I feel like writing a book is such a vulnerable move. Like you're literally putting yourself out on a limb, and it's like a piece of you, right? Like no matter what you write about, it's a piece of you, that you're giving or putting out there, and it's not an easy thing to do. And it's been really well received. I just totally dig it. And going back to the beginning phase, like what was it that I know you're a writer, so I'm sure you're like, I'm going to write a book one day. But what was the original spark, and what pushed you to continue? Because I imagine, for some people it probably just flows out, and for others it's a process.
There were some days and some nights and some weekends where I was in flow mode. And then there were other, mostly weeknights, where like we were also in the process of pivoting Bulletin from a retail business to a technology company. So like that I was working harder than I ever had, and then it was like, oh, it's 9:30 and I have to write a book. Like those weeknights were like very brutal and like constipated, and I had to just like force it out and push it out and figure out like what I wanted to say. um the origins of the book were actually pretty like magical, remarkable, fortuitous. Bulletin was in the New York Times in November of 2017. And I guess my now literary agent had read it and thought that one of the quotes I gave was like funny and cheeky, and then did some Googling and realized that I was a writer. I had written for Medium, Refinery 29. Since then, I've written for Cosmo, TechCrunch, and he reached out to me and was like, I think Bulletin is awesome. I think your store is awesome. I think you have a great narrative voice. I'm like, what, like, would you want to put a book proposal together? Let's chat about it. So it came inbound, which was really crazy because I've wanted to be a published author since I was 6 years old. It was a dream coming true for me in real time.
You put that energy out from that young of an age, it's gonna come back.
Yes, and I had so many moments of just, like, realizing this sometimes and stopping in the middle of the street and just, like, crying, like, I'm getting emotional. Ugh, why am I getting emotional even thinking about it? I'm sorry. I just, like,
Aw, no.
it was, I really had, like, thought I was kissing that goal goodbye because, as you know, building a business is, like, it's a full-time job times 100. And I was like, I'm never going to be able to write again. And the fact that I was given this opportunity to not only write, but marry my writing with building a business and what I was actually doing entrepreneurially was a absolute dream come true and so mind blowing, still is. Um, and when I literally had a blank page in front of me, and they were my then I got a second literary agent, and they were both like, okay, what's the book about? And I really felt like when I started Bulletin at age 24, so between ages 24, 25 up until 26 when I was approached, I felt really shitty, insecure, incompetent, and just like out of my wits as a business owner. Kind of going back to what we were talking about before, Girl Boss had just come out in 2014. Um, like Glossier had launched, Outdoor Voices had launched, like all of these The Wing had just launched. All of these like really massively funded, venture-backed companies. And at the time, Bulletin was bootstrapped, as I said early on. I just felt like I'm not going to be able to do anything if I don't have this capital. All of these women look and seem so perfect. I never hear about them making mistakes. I feel like there's this version of entrepreneurship that I'm getting fed through the media and through Instagram that is just so not in line with how I'm experiencing entrepreneurship. I felt in my bones every day. Like it's this roller coaster that you sign up for. There are wins, there are losses. There are moments when you have crazy, depressive, anxious episodes. There are moments where you feel like you're on top of the world. And the version of entrepreneurship that I was being fed was pretty like candy colored, cookie cutter, like girl boss, babe, you got this, girl. And that wasn't enough for me. And I felt like I had a really hard time finding a book that spoke about entrepreneurship in real time from the trenches, as it actually was, which is that it's hard, it's taxing, it's psychologically draining, it's emotionally tumultuous. And I wanted to write a book that gave advice and like would tell you how to build a great brand or tell you how to hire the first person to your team or figure out when to fire people. Like all of that's in there. But more importantly, I wanted the book to feel like a companion, or like a support group of like three other hardworking founders. If you don't have that support group where you can pick it up in the morning or pick it up at night and feel seen and heard and inspired, but also feel like this is real. Like this isn't some like, you know, multi-level marketing scheme like hashtag girl boss mumbo jumbo. Like this book understands the taxing, you know, tumultuous parts of entrepreneurship and is weaving those realities and stories of those realities into the advice that's being given, and the hardships are being on full display. So that's basically what I set out to do with the book, and I was lucky enough to interview 30 other incredible business owners about their journeys building their businesses and their experiences going through these highs, experiencing these lows. So it's not just my story and me and Alana's story building Bulletin. It's really the story of us, but also 30 other incredible women building businesses of different stages and sizes. Like, if you can't relate to me as a venture backed technology founder writing this book, you might be able to relate to Randy, who is an Etsy seller, who is a teacher full time during the week and like sells her amazing jewelry on the weekends and weeknights. Or you might be able to relate to Trinity, who at the time I interviewed her was not a venture backed founder. She had fully bootstrapped her amazing brand Gold from day one with her business partner, fiance. And, her story is very different than mine, as is the stories of the other 29, 30 founders that are featured. So yeah, I think that was really the inspiration. It was like, let's actually put together like a real ass vulnerable raw book on entrepreneurship that is written in real time from the trenches, rather than so many business books which are written in 2020 hindsight, and in my opinion have this layer of toxic positivity that just isn't effective in helping entrepreneurs feel like that they can get through the hard times.
Yeah, it's so funny. There's two things that really stood out that you just said. One of them I say all the time. Like, I remember um reading, I can't remember whose book it was, but it was like, I was like, this book was written 20 years later, after, I think it was Ariane Huffington, when she like, when she fell down the stairs and like it was all about sleep. I'm like, yeah, you can have this, like, I don't know, it's just nothing felt nothing that I read, and I read a lot of business books, felt relevant. And the word that you used was a companion. And I think for people who don't live in major cities, and I was in LA, but I didn't grow up in the business world. I didn't have the connections that a lot of other people had. And I oftentimes didn't have, we've never had a board, but also didn't have that group of people around me who had done it. And so having a tool like this book, man, I wish I had it. When I started when I was 24 too. And it would have just been such an incredible gift. So thank you.
Yeah, I think like for me, even if people don't have a key takeaway of like, oh, I know how to hire a designer now, or I know how to work with a copywriter now, or I know what type of financing I want to go for, like, if that's what you walk away with, great. But the more important thing for me is like, if this book helps you feel more resilient and more confident and more like optimistic, but in a way that's realistic and not like toxic positivity optimistic, if I'm able to seed those feelings in an entrepreneur, then I've succeeded. Like, that to me was my number one goal, just helping a founder get through the emotional, mental, and psychological hurdles of this impossible thing that they're doing, and feeling more empowered and inspired to just give it that one more day. Keep trying, keep trying. Don't let failure get in the way. Like that experience is what I wanted to like share and imbue and communicate. That was way more important to me than like, oh, I learned about crowdfunding now. I'm now going to go do crowdfunding for my business, because like you can use Google for that. The book, I think there are certain parts of the book that you just can't get as an entrepreneur by like DMing another founder or like looking something up on Google.
Oh my gosh. And I can't wait for you to get all the emails of like, you helped me start my business. It's going to be awesome.
I'm getting them. It's like it's when I tell you that this still doesn't feel real to me. Like, I met up with a mentee last night and she's like, "Have you gone to a bookstore yet to see the book in a bookstore?" The book came out in April. And I was like, "No, I feel like I'm scared. I'm like scared for it to be real." I can't explain it. Or like when people DM me, I'm like, "You're lying."
I said 10 years in and I'm still that way. It just hasn't clicked yet. So I have a funny, silly question, but we were on a panel together and it was like the first thing that came up in my head, because it's, when you build a brand, it's something that you have to be conscious of. And I'm like, so there's a swear word in the title of your book. Were Was that a conscious decision? Were you worried about it? Because we use the word like badass in a lot of our branding and stuff. And it's anytime you do that, anytime you do anything, you could potentially offend somebody. But I would love to know if that was like a thought that, came to you, and how and why you made that decision.
Yeah. So I actually didn't come up with the title. Um, and my editor didn't come up with the title. There was another uh, person on the Abrams team who read early pages of the book, and the title just like came to her like in a vision. And I remember meeting with my editor in person, um, which feels like forever ago now, however many years ago, because the book actually got delayed a few times. It got delayed because of COVID, but then it got delayed previously, I want to say twice over for like different competitive titles. And that often happens. But uh, Sam, my editor, sat me down and she was like, okay, I think we have the title. Like, here's what it is. And I think the subtitle to me was the most, I'm just trying to pull up the full subtitle. The subtitle to me was the thing that really resonated. It's How to Build a Goddamn Empire, advice on creating your brand with high tech smarts, elbow grease, infinite hustle, and a whole lot of heart. Like, if I could make a cauldron of like all the things I put into Bulletin, like heart, elbow grease, infinite hustle, and smarts, like that's the cauldron. Like, those are the four ingredients. And I didn't have any concerns about the How to Build a Goddamn Empire piece and the word goddamn, because this book is me. Like, this book feels like me. I can't like, I don't know how else to say it. It's like I hired a designer, like the guidance for the cover was like Rihanna meets Elle Woods from Legally Blonde. Um yeah, like the way that the book is written, it's like the way I would talk, it's the way I would sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, if you this is my belief on being authentic, which is like a word, an overused word, but and I say this a lot with Pound, if you start something and you're not being your true authentic self and the business fails, man, the amount of regrets you'll probably have for just not sticking to who you are. But if you stay true to who you are and you put it out there and it doesn't work, at least you know you did you, you know?
Exactly. And it did become an issue later where, like, I was on the Today Show and they couldn't say the title on the show. And they agreed to put the title on camera, like, very, very briefly. And like, yeah, I could have maybe generated more book sales had the title not been in there. But my goal was for this book to find the right person. Like, I'm sure you feel this way about Pound, and I feel this way about Bulletin. Like, you can't be everything for everyone, at least not right away. Like, even Amazon started out as an online bookstore. Now it's, the everything store. But my where I'm at in my life right now and where I was when I was writing this book, my goal was to find a particular entrepreneur that would resonate with the design, with the title, and the voice of the book. And I accept and understand that that might mean it's, not going to be as widespread as a book that doesn't have a curse word in it, but it will, the people who do read it will read it front to back. They will read every single word of it. And I'd much rather have a smaller community of people reading every word and like finding value and obsessing over it versus a mass amount of people who like realize, you know, a 16th of the way through that it's not for them. And like leave a bad review or regret having purchased it. So the I'm really proud of the book. I'm proud of the package. I'm proud of the title, the design, the voice. And I think that the swear word just makes it Ali. I don't know. It feels right to me. And it did as soon as they pitched it. I was like, "Yep, that's it. Let's do it."
You selfishly gave me the answer I wanted to hear.
Awesome.
I think it's something that everybody, no matter who they are, needs to hear. Like, you have to be on a pod all whoa, early in the morning. You have to be you, like, and it's sometimes the hardest thing to do in this world, is just be your true self. And that, yeah, you're right. That is what Pound is all about. Just unleashing, we call it your inner rock star, but just who you are. Um, so I have one more question for you. And you talk in your book about how you want to help founders and especially women redefine the word success. I would love to know how you personally define, actually, I'd love to know how you defined it pre bulletin and how you define it now.
I write about this in the book, but, like, I've been that type A overachiever girl, like, since I was pushed out of the womb. Like, my mom talks about how I was as a kid, and she's like, "I never had to tell you to do your homework. You always functioned really well alone and independently. Like, if you had free time, you were, like, writing a short story, painting something, like, coming up with a dance, like, recording a music video with your friends." Like, I've always kept busy. I've always pursued my passions and I've always wanted to give everything 200%. Um I I grew up with a mom who is a first generation American. Her parents fled Germany right before the Holocaust. And my mom like lived and breathed wanting me to live the best and most successful life possible. I think sometimes that converted into pressure on me. Um and I love her to death and I don't fault her for it, but I definitely think like I had this thought pattern for most of my life that was like, I will only be liked, appreciated, and loved by my family, my teachers, my peers if I continue to be quote unquote successful. So that meant going to the right school, getting into the right college. That meant getting the best grades. That meant doing all the extracurriculars. That meant just like piling on accolades, getting awards, like whatever whatever would signify to people that I was successful, like that's what I pursued. And so that's for me before Bulletin, success would have been like having a certain amount of money in my bank account, hitting a certain like milestone in my career. Like when I was at Contently, I got promoted 3 times in like less than a year and a half. Like success to me would have meant just like climbing up that ladder and becoming a director by the time I was 25. Like all of these kind of like subjective benchmarks that I could put on LinkedIn or like put on my resume or like share with my mom's friends. Um, those were the things I was chasing, and that's the way that I define success. And I think that a lot of women and founders in general are still trapped in that because that's what gets rewarded. Like founders are mostly posting their press pieces to Instagram or LinkedIn. They're not posting when like they made a mistake or had a hard time or had a bad day or like lost a deal. Um we even if we're talking to other business owners, like I find it so hard sometimes to be vulnerable because there's this notion that everyone needs to be killing it. So even if you're having one-on-one conversations and you're not publicly posting to social, you're like sharing the highlight reel. You're not sharing like the time last week where you were super depressed because like your sales were down and you didn't know what to do. Like people just don't talk about those moments. And so I think for me, success now that I've been building Bulletin for 5 years is waking up every day and like deciding to still do this. Like, as you know, it's very hard. It's like a decision that you have to make every morning. And the fact that you can stay resilient and wake up and keep pushing and keep growing is success. That is successful to me. The fact that you're working on it in the first place, most people would be happy to stay stuck and keep their feet glued to the floor rather than pursue a dream that's hard. And if you've unglued your feet and you're working on something that gives you creative freedom or financial agency or just like professional agency at all, whether it's a side hustle or a full time business, like that makes you successful because that's often the hardest part is to unglue your feet and just get started. And I try to think about there's like a really great paragraph in the book where I write about this. Like, I've tried to reframe success around what have I learned and what does my personal development look like? Am I a better manager now? Am I better at handling confrontation and conflict? Do I know myself better? Have I become more skilled in certain areas, in certain muscles? Have certain muscles gotten stronger? Um, have I become better at handling failure? Have I become more persistent? Have I been able to learn how to deal better with rejection? Like, so much of building a business and launching something is it's a personal journey, and you have to let those personal milestones and those learnings be meaningful and signal some sort of success to you, because if you're just benchmarking against hitting certain revenue milestones or press or a certain NPS score, like a net promoter score with your customers, like if you're just anchoring against those things, then like the hard parts are going to feel extraordinarily hard because you don't believe that there's like a silver lining or that there could be a silver lining, and you're more likely to give up. So that's kind of how I think about success now. I'm not chasing, the prep. We haven't had a PR person, like we haven't done press at Bulletin for like 2 years. Like I'm not chasing the press. I'm not chasing like a certain round of financing. I'm not chasing certain partners. I'm not chasing like being able to show off to the world that I've done or gained X, Y, or Z that they might find impressive. Like I'm trying to think about where do I want to go? What internal goals do I want to meet when it comes to my personal development while building this business? And like, am I constantly learning? And if I'm hitting those goals and I'm constantly learning, then that to me is my new benchmark for being a successful person.
Incredible. So chase feelings and growth, not title and status.
Yes, 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 exactly.
Well, listen, I found this in the panel that we were on together. I find you so inspiring, and you are obviously a very good writer. You speak so beautifully, but you also just seem to have such a great heart, and I think that that shows through. And thank you for writing a book like this. I would love if you could share where to find you, where to find Bulletin, where to find the book with our community, because I know they will be searching.
Thank you. The book is called How to Build a Goddamn Empire. You can find it everywhere books are sold. I recommend getting it from Amazon. Prime is available, it's in stock. Leave a review if you do order it on there. Thanks in advance. You can find me. I'm trying to keep like my socials a little like dialed down lately. It's been so good for my mental health and just like staying sane, but I'm an aggressive story poster. So you can find me at Ali Kriegs, AliKriegs on Instagram. And you can find Bulletin at bulletin.co or at Bulletin on Instagram. And if you're a small business or product based business looking to expand into retailers, please join the community. We'll get you on the shelves, we'll get you placed with some great online retailers. And if you are a retailer, maybe you're a gym owner yourself, or you're in the active space, or you own a boutique, whatever it is, you can source inventory from our platform. And we offer net 60 terms and generous lines of credit to help all of our retailers with cash flow. So yeah, that's what we're all about, and that's where you can find me as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I know our community is gonna get so much from this conversation and the book, and anybody who is a gym owner, please look into Bulletin. I think that's so amazing, and what you're doing is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.